That was the moment my life split into two parts. Before I knew what was flowing through my veins, and after. Before I understood that sometimes God hides miracles in the darkest valleys, and after I learned that lesson the hard way. I'm 64 years old now, and I've seen enough of this world to know that nothing is ever truly over until your last breath leaves your body. But 8 months ago, standing in that blood donation center in Portland, wearing clothes I'd slept in for 3 nights straight, I thought my story had already ended. I was wrong. Let me back up. My name is Marcus Hayes. For 32 years, I was one of the best executive chefs on the West Coast. I built Cascadia from nothing, a 40-seat restaurant that earned 3 Michelin stars, and became the place where senators, celebrities, and tech billionaires fought for reservations 6 months in advance. My wife Alexandra loved that life. She loved the photographers outside our door, the Instagram posts with famous faces, the charity galas where she wore gowns that cost more than most people's cars. What she didn't love, apparently, was me. I found out about the affair on a Tuesday morning. My business partner, Derek Chen, had been stealing from the restaurant for 18 months. Not just money, he was using our accounts to hide his cryptocurrency schemes, funneling investor cash through our books. When the SEC came knocking, they froze everything: bank accounts, business assets, my personal savings that were tangled up in the LLC. They seized the restaurant, my house, even my car. I had $73 in my wallet when the lawyers finished with me. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was watching my wife of 26 years pack her Louis Vuitton luggage into Derek's Mercedes. She stood in our driveway, the bank's driveway by then, and looked at me with something close to pity. "You're not who I thought you were," she said, adjusting her sunglasses. They were Chanel. I'd bought them for her birthday the year before. I need someone who can provide the life I deserve, Marcus. Not someone who's going to drag me down to nothing. "It was Derek who stole from us," I said. My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "You know that. The investigation will prove." "I don't care about investigations." She opened the passenger door. Derek was inside on his phone, not even looking at me. "All I know is you lost everything. You let this happen. That makes you a failure." Then she got in the car and they drove away. I stood there for probably 20 minutes, watching the space where the Mercedes had been, until the repo man showed up for my truck. My brother Tim found me that night sitting on the curb outside the restaurant. The windows were dark, covered with seizure notices. He didn't say anything, just opened the passenger door of his beat-up F-150 and waited until I climbed in. Tim's a mechanic. He owns a small garage in southeast Portland, works on old cars mostly, the kind of work where you get paid in cash and people bring you home-cooked meals instead of leaving Yelp reviews. He's 5 years younger than me, never married, lives in a house that's older than both of us combined. Growing up, I used to think I was better than him. I went to culinary school in Paris. I worked at Le Bernardin in New York. I had awards and accolades, and my picture in food magazines. Tim just had honest work and a clear conscience. He set me up in his basement. It's not much a futon, a space heater, a bathroom with pipes that clank when you run the shower. But it was more than I deserved after decades of barely remembering to call him on his birthday. "Stay as long as you need," he said that first night, handing me a beer. "No judgment, no timeline. We're family." I think I cried then, but I'm not entirely sure. The first few weeks are kind of a blur. Finding work was harder than I expected. Turns out when you're famous for a restaurant that imploded in scandal, nobody wants to hire you. Didn't matter that I wasn't charged with anything. Didn't matter that Derek was the one facing federal charges. My name was in the papers, my face was on the news, and suddenly I was toxic. I applied to every restaurant in Portland, then Vancouver, then Seattle. Nothing. Even the chains turned me down. One hiring manager actually laughed when I handed him my resume. "You're that guy," he said, tossing it in the trash. "Look, man, I don't need drama. Good luck." After 3 months, I took the only job I could get. Dishwasher at a 24-hour diner off Highway 84. $6 an hour plus tips, which meant whatever the waitresses felt like throwing in the bucket at the end of their shift. Some nights that was $15. Some nights it was nothing. I worked the graveyard shift. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., standing at an industrial sink, scraping congealed gravy off plates while truckers and insomniacs and people with nowhere else to go ate eggs and hash browns at the counter. My hands, the same hands that had carved Thanksgiving turkeys for governors and plated Wagyu for tech titans, were now permanently wrinkled from hot water and degreaser. I developed a rash that wouldn't go away. My back hurt constantly from standing. I was 64 years old, and I felt 90. The worst part wasn't the work. It was the invisibility. Nobody looked at dishwashers. I could have been anybody. I could have been nobody. And most days, that's exactly how I felt. My daughter Emily came to see me once. She was 19, taking a gap year before college, trying to figure herself out. She'd been living with Alexandra and Derek in their new condo downtown, the one Derek bought with money he'd stolen from me, though of course they didn't see it that way. We met at a coffee shop. She looked uncomfortable the whole time, stirring her latte but not drinking it. "Mom says you're being stubborn," she said finally. "She says Derek offered to help you get back on your feet, but you refused." "Derek is the reason I fell in the first place," I said quietly. "That's not what the lawyers say." "Emily, I don't know what to believe anymore, Dad." She was crying now, quietly, the way she used to cry when she was little and trying to be brave. "You were always working, always at the restaurant. Do you know how many school plays you missed? How many birthdays? Maybe this is just karma." That word, karma. Like I deserved this. Like losing everything was some kind of cosmic justice for being a workaholic father. She left without finishing her coffee. I sat there for another hour, watching the rain through the window, understanding that I'd lost more than money and reputation. I'd lost my family, too. 6 months into the dishwashing job, I started having nightmares. Not about the restaurant or Alexandra or the investigation, about Iraq. See, there's something I haven't mentioned yet. Before I was a chef, before Paris and Le Bernardin and 3 Michelin stars, I was in the army. 2 tours in Iraq, 2004 to 2006. I was a combat engineer, which is a fancy way of saying I cleared IEDs and checked buildings for bombs. It's also why I learned to cook. The Army sent me to culinary school after I got injured. A piece of shrapnel from a blast caught me in the shoulder, and I couldn't pass the physical anymore. They told me I could either take a desk job or find a new specialty. I chose food. It was the only thing that made sense at the time. You follow a recipe, you get predictable results. You control the heat, the timing, the ingredients. After spending 2 years surrounded by chaos and death, I needed something I could control. But the nightmares came back after I lost everything. Maybe it was the stress. Maybe it was sleeping in Tim's basement, which was dark and cramped like the bunkers we used to sleep in. Whatever the reason, I'd wake up at 2 in the morning, drenched in sweat, hearing explosions that weren't there. Tim noticed. He'd come downstairs sometimes when I woke up shouting, sit on the edge of the futon until my breathing slowed down. "You should talk to someone," he said one night. "Can't afford a therapist. VA's free. VA's useless." He didn't argue, just sat there in the dark with me until I stopped shaking. It was Tim who suggested the blood donation. We were eating dinner mac and cheese from a box, the kind that costs 89 cents at the grocery store when he mentioned it. "They're doing a blood drive at the VA clinic," he said. $50 per donation, could help with groceries." $50. That was nearly 2 full shifts at the diner after taxes. "I'll go tomorrow," I said. The VA clinic was in a strip mall between a dollar store and a Chinese takeout place. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and old magazines. I filled out the paperwork, pages and pages of questions about my medical history, medications, when I'd last traveled overseas. There was a question that made me pause. "Have you ever been exposed to chemical or biological agents?" I thought about the burning oil fields, the smell that never quite left my nostrils for months after we rotated home, the injections they gave us before deployment, cocktails of vaccines and God knows what else. I checked yes and wrote military service. Iraq, 2004 to 2006 inches the space provided. The intake nurse was young, maybe mid-20s, with kind eyes and a name tag that read Kayla. She looked at my paperwork, then looked at me. "Mr. Hayes, It says here you were in Iraq during the burn pit era? Yeah. Balad Air Base, mostly. Why? Just making a note. She smiled. We're doing extra screening for veterans who were exposed to environmental hazards. It's part of a new VA initiative. Nothing to worry about. She took my vitals, wrapped the blood pressure cuff around my arm. Her movements were efficient but gentle, like she'd done this 10,000 times. You doing okay? She asked while we waited for my blood pressure to register. I mean, besides the obvious. The obvious? The questions ask about depression, anxiety, difficulty sleeping. You checked yes on all of them. I'd forgotten about that section. I'm fine. You're here donating blood for $50. She said it gently. No judgment. That tells me you're probably not fine. But that's okay. A lot of vets go through rough patches. She stuck me in the crook of my elbow, and I watched my blood flow into the collection bag. Dark red, ordinary, unremarkable. Just blood. All done, Kayla said 20 minutes later. Here's your $50 and a cookie. You're supposed to sit for 15 minutes before leaving. Make sure you don't get dizzy. I sat in the recovery area, eating my cookie vanilla wafers, the kind that come in plastic sleeves, and watching other donors come and go. Most of them looked like me. Older veterans, tired eyes, wearing thrift store clothes. We were all here for the same reason. $50 was $50. I was almost to the exit when Kayla called my name. Mr. Hayes, could you come back for a moment? Something in her voice made my stomach drop. That careful, controlled tone that people use when they're about to deliver bad news. I followed her back to a small office. A doctor was there, an older man with silver hair and reading glasses perched on his nose. He stood when I entered. Mr. Hayes, I'm Dr. Patel. Please, sit down. I sat. The chair was hard plastic, the kind that makes you feel like you're in trouble even when you're not. Is something wrong with my blood? The question came out before I could stop it. Am I sick? Is it cancer? No. Dr. Patel held up his hands. Nothing like that. Your blood is. Actually, it's remarkable. That's why we needed to speak with you immediately. He turned his computer monitor so I could see it. There were graphs and numbers that meant nothing to me. Mr. Hayes, are you familiar with the Bombay blood group? No. It's extremely rare. Approximately 0.0004% of the population, about 4 people in every million. He clicked to another screen. You have the Bombay phenotype, but that's not all. Your blood also shows evidence of unusual antibodies likely from environmental exposure during your military service. I stared at him. What does that mean? It means your blood is unique, potentially one of a kind on Earth. He leaned forward. Mr. Hayes, there's a patient in Geneva, a 17-year-old girl with a severe genetic disorder. She needs a very specific type of blood to survive a treatment protocol. We've been searching for a compatible donor for 8 months. You're the first viable match we've found. The room felt too small suddenly, too hot. You want me to donate more blood? We want you to go to Switzerland, to Geneva. There's a pharmaceutical research facility there, Hayes Biomedical. They're developing the treatment, and they're desperate to find a donor. Hayes, my last name. The coincidence seemed impossible. How much blood are we talking about? Several donations over the course of a few weeks. You'd be compensated, of course. The family is offering substantial. How much? Doctor. Patel wrote a number on a piece of paper and slid it across the desk. I looked at it, read it twice, 3 times. $2 million. My hands started shaking. I put them in my lap where the doctor couldn't see. There's one more thing, Dr. Patel said carefully. We ran a standard DNA analysis as part of the screening. It's routine for international donors. And we found something unusual in your genetic profile. What kind of unusual? He hesitated. Mr. Hayes, have you ever done ancestry research? Do you know much about your family history? My parents died when I was 12. Car accident. Tim and I went into foster care. We don't know much about the family tree beyond our grandparents. I see. Dr. Patel clicked to another screen. According to your DNA results, you have a significant genetic connection to the Hayes family in Switzerland, the same Hayes family that owns the pharmaceutical company. The room tilted slightly. That's impossible. DNA doesn't lie. Based on the markers, you're a direct descendant. First-degree relative to the current patriarch, Wilhelm Hayes. Wilhelm Hayes. The name meant nothing to me. I'd never heard it before in my life. I don't understand, I said. Neither do we, entirely. But the family has been notified, and they're very eager to meet you. They've already arranged for a private flight tomorrow morning, all expenses paid. Someone will pick you up at 8 a.m. I walked out of the clinic in a daze. The $50 bill was still in my pocket, forgotten. $2 million. A family I didn't know existed. A girl in Geneva who needed my blood to survive. It felt like a dream, or a scam. Probably a scam. I went back to Tim's house and told him everything. He listened without interrupting, drinking beer on the couch while I paced back and forth in his living room. "So what are you going to do?" he asked when I finished. "I don't know. It sounds insane, right? This doesn't happen to real people. You already lost everything, Marcus." Tim crushed his empty beer can. "What's the worst that could happen? They harvest your organs and sell them on the black market? That's not funny. I'm not joking. That's literally the worst-case scenario, and you're already living in my basement washing dishes for $6 an hour. At least go see what this is about. If it's real, you get $2 million. If it's fake, you get a free trip to Switzerland." He had a point. "What if it's real?" I asked quietly. "What if I really have family over there? Rich family who never bothered to look for us while we were growing up in foster care? Then you ask them why." Tim stood up, put a hand on my shoulder. "And then you take their money anyway. Because you earned it, brother. You survived Iraq. You survived losing everything. You get to survive this too." I barely slept that night. I kept thinking about the number Dr. Patel had written down. $2 million. Enough to pay off my legal debts. Enough to start over. Enough to maybe, possibly, earn back some dignity. But more than that, I thought about the girl. 17 years old, dying of some genetic disease I didn't understand. If my blood could save her, didn't I have an obligation to try? The car arrived at 7:30 a.m. Black Mercedes, diplomatic plates. The driver was polite but silent, loading my single duffel bag. Everything I owned fit in one bag now into the trunk. Tim stood on his porch, coffee mug in hand. "Call me when you land," he said. "I will. And Marcus?" He raised his mug in a small salute. "Don't let them make you feel small. You're worth more than they'll ever understand." The Portland airport has a private terminal for charter flights. I'd never seen it before, never had a reason to. The plane was a Gulfstream, cream leather seats, a flight attendant who offered me champagne before takeoff. I asked for water. We flew for 11 hours. I watched movies, tried to sleep, mostly just sat there feeling like I'd stepped into someone else's life. The flight attendant brought me meals that were better than anything I'd eaten in months. Salmon with asparagus, fresh bread with real butter. For dessert, creme brulee that was almost as good as the one I used to make at Cascadia. Almost. Geneva was gray and cold when we landed. November in Switzerland feels different than November in Oregon, sharper somehow, more austere. Another Mercedes was waiting on the tarmac, another silent driver. We drove through the city, past old buildings and expensive shops, until we reached the lake. The car turned onto a private drive that wound through manicured gardens, even in late autumn. At the end sat a mansion that looked like it belonged in a history book. Stone walls, peaked roofs, actual turrets at the corners. The driver opened my door. "Mr. Hayes is expecting you in the library." Mr. Hayes, my supposed relative, my alleged family. A butler, an actual butler in a vest and tie, led me through halls lined with oil paintings and antique furniture. Everything smelled like lemon polish and old money. We stopped at a set of double doors. "The library, sir." He opened the doors. The room was exactly what you'd expect from a library in a Swiss mansion. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather chairs, a fireplace with actual logs burning. And sitting in one of those chairs, brandy glass in hand, was a man who looked like an older, European version of me. Same jawline, same eyes, same hands, long-fingered and strong. Wilhelm Hayes stood slowly, setting down his glass. "Marcus," he said. His English was perfect, barely accented. My God. You look just like him. Like who? Your father. My brother. He crossed the room, stopped a few feet away, studying my face like he was memorizing it. I haven't seen Heinrich in 62 years. Not since the night he left. Heinrich. My father's name was Harold, not Heinrich. I think there's been a mistake, I started to say. No mistake. Wilhelm gestured to a chair. Please sit. We have much to discuss, and very little time. My granddaughter Anna, she's the one who needs your blood. She's in the hospital wing now, waiting. I sat because my legs were suddenly unsteady. What's wrong with her? Genetic disorder. Hemophilia variant, extremely rare. The treatment requires a very specific blood type, yours. He poured himself more brandy, offered me one. I shook my head. But before we discuss that, you deserve to know the truth about your father, about our family. I'm listening. Wilhelm settled back in his chair, firelight playing across his face. He looked older than 64, which meant he had to be in his 80s. But his eyes were sharp, calculating. Our father, your grandfather, was Dr. Klaus Hayes. Perhaps you've heard of him? No. Most people haven't. He was careful about that. Wilhelm swirled his brandy. Klaus was a brilliant biochemist in Germany during the 1930 seconds and 40 seconds. He worked for the Reich, developing medical treatments for soldiers. After the war, he saw which way the wind was blowing. Operation Paperclip, you know about that? I did. The U.S. program that brought Nazi scientists to America gave them immunity in exchange for their research. Klaus was supposed to go to America, Wilhelm continued. But at the last moment, he changed his mind. Came to Switzerland instead, took the family fortune with him. Started Hayes Biomedical in 1946. Built it into what it is today, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in Europe. You're telling me my grandfather was a Nazi scientist. I'm telling you, your grandfather was a complicated man who made choices we would find unconscionable today. But his research, Wilhelm gestured vaguely. It forms the foundation of treatments that have saved millions of lives. Insulin protocols, anticoagulants, genetic therapies, built on research from concentration camps. The words tasted bitter. Built on knowledge that existed regardless of its origin. Should we throw away cures because of how we learned to make them? I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Your father, Heinrich, he didn't see it that way, Wilhelm said. He was young, idealistic. When he learned the full truth about Klaus's war work, he confronted our father, demanded he confess, donate the fortune to Holocaust survivors, shut down the company. Klaus refused. So Heinrich left, changed his name to Harold, moved to America, disappeared. I never saw him again. He died in a car crash when I was 12, I said. My mother too. Wilhelm's face softened slightly. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Klaus forbade us from searching for Heinrich, said he made his choice and we should respect it. And now you need me. Now Anna needs you. Wilhelm leaned forward. She's 17, Marcus. Smart, kind, wants to study medicine, save lives, ironically. She has her whole future ahead of her. Without your blood, she has 6 months at most. The manipulation was obvious, but that didn't make it less effective. $2 million, I said. A fraction of what you're owed as Klaus's heir. He left everything to me and my children. If Heinrich had stayed, half would have been his. Half would now be yours. I don't want blood money. All money is blood money, if you trace it back far enough. Wilhelm finished his brandy. But I understand your hesitation. So I'll make you an offer. Save Anna. Let us do the treatments. And afterward, we'll sit down with lawyers and accountants. You can decide what to do with your inheritance. Keep it, donate it, burn it for all I care. But give her a chance first. I thought about Emily. 19 years old, the same age as Anna. If she were dying, what wouldn't I do? I want to see her, I said. Before I decide anything, I want to see her. Wilhelm smiled, and for the first time, I saw the resemblance between us clearly. We both had the same smile, sad around the edges, like we'd learned early that happiness was temporary. Of course. Follow me. The hospital wing was in the East Tower, all glass and chrome and medical equipment that probably cost more than most hospitals' entire budgets. Anna was in a private room. propped up in bed, reading a book. She looked up when we entered, and her face broke into a cautious smile. She didn't look sick, pale, maybe, dark circles under her eyes, but still beautiful in that fragile way some teenagers have, halfway between childhood and whatever comes next. "You're Marcus," she said. American accent, like she'd been to international schools. "Grandfather told me you might come." "Hey, Anna." I didn't know what else to say. "It's weird, right? Finding out you have family you didn't know about?" She dog-eared her page, a thick fantasy novel with a dragon on the cover. "I didn't know about you either, until last week. Apparently I have a great uncle who ran away to America and became a famous chef." "Was a famous chef." Past tense. "Grandfather said you lost your restaurant. I'm sorry." "Don't be. I lost a lot more than that." She studied me with disconcerting directness. "Are you going to help me?" The question was simple. The answer wasn't. "Your great-grandfather did terrible things," I said. "I know. We all know. The whole family knows." Anna pulled her knees up to her chest. "I used to think that if I became a doctor, I could somehow make up for it. Save enough lives to balance the scales. But then I got sick, and I realized—" Her voice cracked slightly. "I realized I might not get the chance." "You're 17. I'm dying. Those are different things." Wilhelm had retreated to the doorway, giving us space. I could feel him watching, gauging my reaction. "If I do this," I said slowly, "I don't want the money." Anna blinked. "What?" "The $2 million. I don't want it. Use it for something good. Holocaust education, reparations funds. Something that actually helps people." I looked at Wilhelm. "And I want complete transparency about Hayes Biomedical's history. No more secrets. Full disclosure about Klaus's war work. Whatever skeletons are in the closet, bring them out." Wilhelm's expression was unreadable. That would destroy the company's reputation. Good. Maybe it should be destroyed. Maybe it should never have existed in the first place. I turned back to Anna. "But you get to exist. You get to live. That's worth something." She was crying now, silently, tears running down her pale cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. The treatment started the next morning. I gave blood every other day for 3 weeks, sitting in a medical chair while nurses monitored my vitals and machines hummed quietly. Between donations, I lived in the mansion, eating meals I didn't want, sleeping in guest rooms that felt like museums. Wilhelm and I had several long conversations during those weeks. He was arrogant, defensive about Klaus's legacy, absolutely convinced that the ends justified the means. We argued, sometimes loudly. But gradually, something shifted. Maybe it was seeing Anna get stronger, color returning to her cheeks. Maybe it was just time. "You remind me of Heinrich," Wilhelm said one evening over dinner. "Stubborn, moral, exhausting." I'll take that as a compliment. It wasn't one, but he smiled a little. Klaus used to say Heinrich had a conscience that would get him killed. Perhaps he was right. My father died in a car crash, not because he had morals. "Are you certain?" Wilhelm set down his fork. "The crash was investigated, wasn't it? Brake failure, if I remember correctly. Very sudden, very convenient. The implication hung in the air between us. You're saying Klaus had him killed. I'm saying Klaus had resources, connections, and he was not a man who tolerated disobedience." Wilhelm met my eyes. "I loved my father, Marcus, but I'm not blind to what he was. Perhaps that makes me complicit. Perhaps I should have done more to stop him. But I was young and scared, and I chose survival over righteousness." "Is that why you agreed to the transparency?" I asked. "I agreed because Anna deserves a legacy she can be proud of. And because you're right, we built an empire on blood, and pretending otherwise doesn't change the foundation." He paused. "The board is furious. Stock prices will tank when we release the historical records. But some debts can't be paid in money." After 3 weeks, Anna's treatment was complete. The last blood draw left me exhausted, anemic, probably not as healthy as I should have been. But Anna walked out of her hospital room on her own, hugged me in the hallway, thanked me with words that felt inadequate for what had just happened. "You saved my life," she said. "You gave me a reason to," I replied. The day I left Switzerland, Wilhelm handed me a folder of documents. "Your inheritance," he said. "Legally yours, regardless of what you said. Do whatever you want with it." I didn't open the folder until I was on the plane back to Portland. When I finally did, I found account information, stock certificates, deeds to properties. Wilhelm wasn't exaggerating. My half of Klaus's fortune was substantial, enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. But there was also a letter, handwritten, shaky script, that suggested Wilhelm had written it late at night after too much brandy. "Marcus, your father was the bravest person I ever knew. He walked away from millions because his conscience demanded it. I stayed because my conscience wasn't strong enough. I've spent 60 years wondering what would have happened if I'd left with him, whether we'd all be better off if Hayes Biomedical had never existed. I don't have answers. But I know this. You are more Heinrich's son than I ever was Klaus's. Whatever you do with this fortune, I trust it will be what he would have wanted. Your uncle, Wilhelm." Tim picked me up from the Portland airport. I looked terrible gaunt, tired, probably $50 away from a medical crisis, but I was smiling. "You look like hell," Tim said. "Feel like it too." "So? Was it real? Did you get your money?" "Better than that. I got answers." I handed him the folder. "And now, I need your help figuring out what to do with these." We drove back to his house, and over mac and cheese, the good kind this time, not the box. I told him everything. About Anna, about Wilhelm, about Klaus, and the hidden history of my family. Tim listened the way he always did, without judgment, just present. When I finished, he said, "So what now?" "Now I make it right." I opened the folder, started sorting through papers. "I'm going to set up a foundation. Fund Holocaust education, support survivors, contribute to medical research that's actually ethical, and then I'm going to use whatever's left to do something Klaus would have hated." "What's that?" "Feed people. Open a restaurant, but not like Cascadia. Something different. A place where nobody gets turned away. Pay what you can model. Job training for people who need second chances. Hire people nobody else will touch: homeless veterans, ex-cons, folks coming out of addiction." I looked up at Tim. "People like me." Tim grinned. "Klaus is rolling in his grave." "Good. Let him roll." The foundation took 6 months to set up. The lawyers were baffled. Most people don't voluntarily give away millions, but eventually we got it done. The Hayes Legacy Fund, with Anna as one of the board members. She'd recovered completely, started university in Geneva, studying medicine like she'd always wanted. We video called every few weeks. She told me about her classes. I told her about my plans for the restaurant. "What are you going to call it?" she asked during one call. Still deciding. Maybe Harold's, after my father. Or maybe something simpler. What about second chances? I thought about that. About my father walking away from a fortune because it was built on suffering. About Wilhelm spending 60 years with the guilt. About me losing everything, and finding it again in the most unexpected way. "Yeah," I said. "Second chances. I like that." The restaurant opened in Southeast Portland, in a building that used to be a warehouse. Tim helped with the renovation. Turned out he was pretty good with electrical work and plumbing, not just cars. We kept it simple. Long tables for communal dining. Open kitchen so people could see the food being made. A chalkboard menu that changed daily based on what we could get from food banks and farmers who donated their seconds. I hired 12 people for the opening crew. All of them had stories. Homeless veterans, like Daniel, who'd been sleeping in his car for 2 years. Single mothers, like Rita, who was working 3 jobs to support her kids. Teenagers from rough backgrounds, like Marcus. Yes, I hired a kid with my name, and yes, it felt significant, who just needed someone to believe they could do better. We didn't make a profit. That wasn't the point. But we served 150 meals a day, and every single person who walked through our door left with a full stomach and a little bit of dignity. Alexandra called me 3 months after we opened. I almost didn't recognize her number. "I heard about your restaurant," she said. No greeting, no small talk. News travels fast. Are you really donating all your money?" She sounded confused, maybe a little angry. "Derek said you inherited millions. Why aren't you living better? I am living better, Alexandra. Better than I ever did at Cascadia. Silence on the other end. Then, I made a mistake. Leaving you. Derek and I, we're not. It's not working out. I'm sorry to hear that. Maybe we could get coffee? Talk about. No. The word came out softer than I expected. Not angry, just clear. I don't think that's a good idea. Marcus. I hope you figure things out, Alexandra. I really do. But I'm not part of that equation anymore. I hung up before she could respond. It felt good. Not vindictive good. Just free. Emily reached out a week after that call. She'd heard about the restaurant from friends, came by one night during dinner service. I saw her standing in the doorway, looking uncertain, and my heart just about stopped. Hey, Dad, she said quietly. Hey, Kitto. We talked in the office after service ended. She told me about the last year, how Derek had gambled away most of his money, how Alexandra was spiraling, how she'd moved out and was couch surfing with friends, trying to figure out what to do next. I'm sorry, she said. About what I said before. About karma. You didn't deserve any of this. Yes, I did. I poured us both water from the cooler. Not the Derek stuff. But the rest? Yeah. I was a terrible father, Emily. Always working, never present. You deserved better than I gave you. You're here now. I'm here now, I agreed. Can I help? She gestured to the restaurant. With this, I don't know how to cook, but I could wait tables, or wash dishes, or you could learn to cook, if you wanted. Her face lit up in a way I hadn't seen since she was little. Really? Really. But Emily, I waited until she looked at me. This isn't going to be some Instagram perfect father-daughter redemption story. I'm still figuring this out. I'm still working on being better. It's going to be messy and hard, and probably frustrating. That's okay. Messy and hard is still better than nothing. So she joined the crew. Started as a prep cook, learning knife skills and basic techniques. She was terrible at first burned rice, oversalted soup, once served a customer a sandwich with the plastic still on the cheese. But she kept showing up, kept trying, kept getting better. 6 months after the restaurant opened, I got an email from Wilhelm. Anna's health was stable. Hayes Biomedical had released their historical records as promised, and the fallout had been brutal. Stock prices crashed. Several board members resigned. But they'd also established a victims fund, and Anna was working with Holocaust education programs to ensure the history wasn't forgotten. You were right, Wilhelm wrote. Some foundations deserve to crumble, but from the ruins, we're building something better. Anna wants you to know she's thinking of studying hematology, the science of blood. She says you gave her the idea. Your uncle, Wilhelm. Tim came by the restaurant every Tuesday for dinner. Usually ordered the same thing, meatloaf and mashed potatoes, the most boring item on our menu. One Tuesday, he brought a woman with him, introduced her as Susan. She owned a bookstore down the street. I asked her out, Tim said, looking proud and embarrassed. Figured if my brother can reinvent his life at 64, I can take a chance at 59. About time, I said, shaking Susan's hand. Welcome to the family chaos. On my 65th birthday, the team threw me a surprise party after closing. Nothing fancy, grocery store cake, party hats from the dollar store, singing that was enthusiastic if not particularly melodic. Emily made a speech about second chances and how sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is really the best thing in disguise. I didn't cry. But it was close. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in the dining room, looking at the walls. We'd hung pictures, photos of the team, customers, community events. A whole wall was dedicated to our alumni, people who'd worked with us and moved on to better jobs, better lives. I thought about that day in the blood donation center, how desperate I'd been for $50, how broken I'd felt. I thought about Anna, alive and thriving in Geneva, because blood, the same blood that connected me to a legacy of horrors, had given her a future. I thought about my father Heinrich, walking away from millions because his conscience demanded it, never knowing his son would one day have to make the same choice. And I thought about my life, the before and the after. How I'd spent 32 years building Cascadia, chasing Michelin stars and magazine covers, and the approval of people who didn't matter. How I'd lost everything and found something better in the ruins. My phone buzzed. Text from Emily. Love you, Dad. Thanks for teaching me that it's never too late to start over. I texted back. Love you too. Thanks for giving me a reason to. I'm 65 now. I wash dishes most nights, side by side with people who've been where I've been. My hands are permanently wrinkled from hot water. My back aches. I sleep in a studio apartment above the restaurant that's smaller than my closet used to be at the house Alexandra and I owned, and I've never been happier. Because here's what I learned. The moment your life splits into before and after doesn't have to be about blood tests or inheritances or discovering long-lost families. Sometimes it's simpler than that. Sometimes it's just the moment you realize that losing everything is really just another way of saying you're free to become anything. My name is Marcus Hayes. I'm the grandson of a Nazi scientist, the son of a man brave enough to walk away, and the uncle of a girl who gets to live because sometimes miracles really do hide in the darkest valleys. And every single day, I choose to be better than where I came from. That's my story. That's my split. That's the moment everything changed. And I wouldn't trade it for anything, not even 3 Michelin stars.